Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have Warren Pretorius on from Tennis Analytics. Warren, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So you, Warren, your name is probably the somewhere in the first or second most mentioned names on this podcast, but you still haven't been on. I talk about the influence you and Craig have had on me in my tennis journey the last 5 years of improving my own doubles game, just learning more about tennis as a whole, and then really the kind of data-driven approach to the game that you have. So the first thing I wanted to do is ask, let's say you're sitting on a plane or something and you're chatting with somebody next to you and they say, "What do you do?" How do you answer that question?
Well, I tell them that the first thing is I say I'm in the analytics game, and then they'll be saying, you know what, in analytics, like exactly what you do, and for most of the time, people think you're in the business. So because I think a lot of or business or sciences or something like that, or academics, and then I say sports analytics, and usually I get a very inquisitive or favorable response because they're going, wow. I don't talk to many people who are in that field, and then you explain a little bit more. You say, yeah, how this started with everything. I mean, really it started with me, getting involved with Dartfish as a salesperson, but I was always a tennis coach before then, and then we get into the topic of like, well, how did you get into tennis analytics? And really, when I explained that it was actually from baseball, it was my, the whole Moneyball and me being involved with training baseball academies or baseball teams, pro teams on how to index video, and that's how analytics gets born. And then they're interested. They go, so what does that mean? Are you telling people how many forehands and backhands that they miss? And I go, yeah, well, that's a part of it. But a big part is just, breaking down everything that a player does. And then getting into being, how you use it is not only for a player's own development, but also then for scouting data.
Right. So I didn't know that it started with baseball. So you were working with some baseball teams?
Yeah, so when I ran an academy and it was very heavily involved with Dartfish early on. It was a new software. It was primarily a ski software. So I worked with the US ski team because they're based in Park City, and a lot of those skiers used to come out and play tennis, like Lindsey Vonn, Bodie Miller, Ted Ligety, a bunch of them all played tennis, and were all very, very good players. And we I always used to videotape them, and was one of them approached me and said, why don't you use Dartfish? And I was going, Dartfish, what is that? And I did some research and saw that there was a software out there that was used in skiing, and it was primarily in broadcast. And I got the software, and I saw that they were developing a coaching application, and the coaching application was not just technical analysis, but there was also the other side of it was for game film breakdown or tagging, and that was very intriguing. And so I developed I started working on that, and one thing led to another. Is I became pretty good at this, using the software, and Dartfish hired me. And I became the region director for the Northeast. So it was New England mainly. And I then, even though I was living in Utah, I'd spend, 1 week a month out there and visiting all the universities. But a primary market then and still now for Dartfish is Major League Baseball. And baseball it was and is the leader in the collection of stats or indexed stats. So when I say indexed stats, it just means that the stats are linked to the actual video. So anyway, I started like training the baseball teams because all of them wanted to, get an edge on it was started by Oakland A's and Billy Bean.
Right.
And so I did a lot of training. I think I did the training for Yankees, it was Red Sox. I know that the other guys in Dartfish were involved also. And it was the Rangers, a bunch of teams. But I was learning, because when you start seeing how they're using stats, and at that stage, how tennis was using stats, I mean, it was
Yeah.
night and day.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot. And really, the tennis analytics model was built on the learnings from what I saw in baseball. And, at about the same time, I was also doing some early projects with Craig O'Shaughnessy. So, and that was a long time ago. It's probably around 2000, I would say 2002. I remember that because it was around the time of the Winter Olympics that we were getting into all of this. 2002, 2005, in that period.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I can't believe I didn't know that full story, and that it was actually connected to baseball, because I always associate it, like when people ask me about, how the tagging works and stuff, I use the Moneyball phrase to tell them, but I didn't know you actually had that connection with baseball.
Connection. Yeah.
So fast forward to recent years, now tennis analytics, you've got like 20 or 30 employees. Is that right?
Yeah. So actually, it's not just on tennis analytics. I formed tennis analytics in about 2011, but it really became operational in about 2013. And then we started, the cornerstone was I worked with Djokovic and with him and his team, and then worked with a bunch of other pros, and also with started working with college teams. And that was an interesting, a difficult nut to crack, because it's not like the pros or an individual player where they play a match. They're going to play one match, every day, or maybe one match every other day. Whereas a college team is playing 6 singles and 3 doubles one day, and on a match, and that's about 12 to 14 hours worth of footage. And they usually do that 2 or 3 times a week. So we did that, which meant that we needed to have a staff. And in the beginning, I was thinking, we used college students who were pretty tech savvy and could chart. But again, the commitment was sort of fickle, because they got exams, and they usually have exams around May or June. They have big exams, and then they've got to take off, and that's really at the peak of our season for NCAAs and the French Open and Wimbledon. So what ended up happening, to cut a long story short, is that we really evolved that model on staffing, outsourcing. And then it eventually got to the stage where I formed another company with some partners in South Africa, and it's called Versus Sports. And Versus Sports, then we developed a similar model to tennis analytics, but in other sports. So we do a lot of stuff in baseball and softball, and also with the USA boxing. We've done work in Taekwondo, and we're also doing a big project with Aussie rules football. So applying the same model. But when we did that, we also built a team, an outsourcing team, where we've got, at the moment, it's up to 24 employees. And these analysts are trained in charting in tennis, but also most of them are cross-trained in other sports, which is very healthy, because it keeps their brains active, rather than just doing one sport at a time and just getting totally bored. So it prevents burnout. And we have about 24, and we're busy growing that. We're in the process of adding even more because of some of the projects that we've got. So I think probably by the end of the year, we'll be up to 30 employees.
Awesome. Yeah. So to focus on the tennis at this point, you've got college clients, USTA, I believe. I know you've worked with Tennis Canada, as well as a number of pro players, right? Can you throw some names out there that people might be familiar with?
Well, we've first on the USTA and Tennis Canada. The USTA are our biggest client, so we do all of the players of interest. We've been doing that for years now. So whenever any Americans are playing, like at Wimbledon now. I mean, we did our work actually ended today with Anna Samova losing, and also with Taylor Fritz losing. So, but we provide them with all that data, and also some of that is scouting data for oppositional scouting. We then also, on the pro side, we've worked with, like I said, I had the contract with Djokovic. Most recently, I worked with Bianca Andreescu, and I was providing her a concierge service when she won she won the US Open.
Yeah.
I also did work with Felix Auger-Aliassime and with Denis Shapovalov, and we've done. I went to Wimbledon a couple of years ago with Milos, and I was doing oppositional scouting. So we do that. We've worked with a couple of other players, Brandon Nakashima. But that's just not a cornerstone of our business. We do it. We haven't really pushed it because we're really focused on the collegiate market. And then we work with the federations. So Davis Cup, Fed Cup, Olympics, we rather provide a data service and analytics to the team. And then we also sponsor some of the junior events, like we'll be at Kalamazoo, and we're very heavily involved at Junior Orange Bowl and Orange Bowl, and then a number of other national events. So that just gives us the full scope of data, from the 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, all the way through top playing pros, collegiate, challenger, and then playing pros.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about this data set that you've started and we've started kind of analyzing together. We looked at 3, 5, 4-0, and I think even a few 4-5 level doubles matches. And for people listening, we'll link in the show notes to some of the things we talk about, but they can actually use Tennis Analytics to get their own matches charted by uploading a video of their match, and then your team will tag it, and then they can get a report and figure out what their own optimal patterns are, which we'll talk about here in a second. But let's go through a couple of key points here from this data set. So we looked at over 1,400 points, which is not a huge sample size. It sounds big, but it's, a lot of times we're looking at hundreds of thousands of points of data. So 1,400 points, 3-5, 4-0, and some 4-5 level matches. So the first key point here is 68% of all the points were between 1 and 4 shots. So as if I were a 4-0 or 3-5 level player listening to this, what does that mean for me?
Well, the rally is, like we know, one of the universal truths of the sport, and I think it's been pointed out by Craig in depth and at length, and also in the articles that I've written. It's sometimes misinterpreted, but one of the universal truths of the sport is that rallies are very short. Most rallies end within 4 shots, and then the majority of points, then even if you look at the first 6 shots and then the first 8 shots, and then it's very rare that points go longer than 3 touches per player. There would be a 6-shot rally, but most of them are done before a player's even hit their 3rd shot. So what that really means is it doesn't mean only go practice playing short points, but what it means is pay special attention to the first 2 shots that you hit. So the most important shots in tennis are going to be the serve and the return. So be good at those. And typically it's like, I don't want to say don't miss them, because you have to be aggressive. A double fault like on the serve is not all bad, okay, but too many are bad. So you've got to be aggressive on your serve. You've got to spend time practicing that serve, and you've got to also spend time practicing the return, which is probably the most under-practiced shot, and it's probably the most important shot. Most lessons that players take, they'll go out and they'll go hit balls with their coach, and they'll do a lot of rallying, a lot of drilling, cross court, and all of that, and then at the end of the lesson, the coach will say, "Oh, we've got 5 minutes left. Let's go hit a few serves."
Yeah.
And then when they do hit serves out of the basket, it's not in the context of how they use the stroke in a match. So what they'll do then is go serve 10 serves in a row in the deuce court.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what happens. There's, you have to also practice that. You have to practice the tempo that you're going to use in a match. And that would be playing points. So I think a lot, and the return, on the return is probably the most under practice shots. It's very rare unless a coach is specifically working on that in a lesson. Players don't even hit returns.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So with 68 at 1-4, and then I also saw 93% were 1-8. So that means only 7% of points in this data set were 9 shots or more, which is crazy. That's four touches.
Yeah, remember
per
that this is also doubles. Okay, so in doubles the points are are shorter than in singles. So yeah, and I just want to back up. I want to say, with this we've always in the analytics field, I think that not a mistake that we've made, but we sometimes overlook the fact that the bulk of our players are at the 3-5 and the 4-0 levels. Yet, all of the analytics models and all that in the beginning are targeted towards the very elite players, the very best pros, the very best college players, the very best juniors, when that's not where the bulk of our players are. So what we've started doing in this project now is sort of going down to club level players. And the club level players, like we said, the 3-5s, the 4-0s, and the 4-5s, and trying to see if there's any similarities in the data compared to the rest of the data that we've collected. Now we're at the early stages, so I just want to say that is that when we say we've got 1,400 points, we typically have more than 1,400 points on any individual player that we're working with. So a lot of the numbers that are coming now, when we do more of these projects, we were set back a little bit with COVID, because we really embarked on a project with a couple of academies and with the USTA, and now that we're getting back to normal, we're hoping to increase this data set. So everything that we're looking at now, you have to take with a grain of salt, because we do need to have a bigger data set. And even with the rally lengths, now I don't think the rally lengths are going to change a whole lot. I think that you're going to find that, even in the 5 to 8 range, I think, whatever we were finding that even at the junior level is in that 5 to 8 range, 2/3 of those points actually are done within 6. So I'm starting to look at more, instead of looking at 1 through 4 and then 5 through 8, is actually to start looking 1 through 2, the serve and the return, 3 and 4, the second shots that players hit, and then 5 and 6, the third shots hit. And I think that's pretty interesting. So if you were to extrapolate that, I mean, what do we say? The 1 to 4 was 68%. 68. So then, and then the 5 to 8
was 93 total. So if we do 93 minus 68 is 25%. So of that 25%,
so 2/3 of that 25 is going to be like
16. Yeah.
So 16 plus the 60 odd is done within 6 shots.
Yeah. So that's 84. 84%. We're done within 6 shots. So it's a super high percentage.
Yeah. So again, to go back to players, it's very doubles or singles, is to say the first 3 shots that be really good at the first 3 shots that you touch, you and your partner touch. And you do have to practice it. That doesn't mean that you don't. I think that, a lot of this is misinterpreted by coaches, and players will come to us and say, "Oh, well, you're saying that the long rallies, the 15-shot rallies, are not important, that we don't need to practice them." And we go like, "No, that's not what we're saying. If you're good at a long rally, you're probably going to be very good at a short rally. You need to be consistent. You need to go out there and be repetitive. You need to work on movement. You need to work on consistency, the stroke repetition is very important. The movement that you get in long rallies, from the fitness standpoint is important, mental toughness. But the fact is that both you and your opponents are trying to finish the point as quickly as possible. If you get an opportunity on that second ball to hit it at your partner's, at your opponent's body or feet, or take them out, you're going to do it. You're not going to pop it back to them to see if you can see how long you can rally for.
Yeah, it makes sense. So a couple other things from this. One was the return data. I think we found a little surprising, and this is probably a result of the few number of points that we have. But we found that the backhand return yielded more winners and fewer errors than the forehand. So that was surprising when I saw it. Typically what I would find when I'm looking at a data set is the forehand's going to commit more errors in a lot of cases, but also have more winners. But on the return data, that wasn't true for this data set.
I think that's an anomaly. I think that we'll look at that. I mean, we chatted about this and said that really what we need is we need a bit more data, but we're not fudging the data. We're just taking the exact count that we get, and then we're running it through and going like, you'll either be surprised at something, or you'll be going, hey, I'm not surprised. This is in keeping with what we're doing. But I don't think that we can make any like hard conclusions simply because we don't have enough data yet. But that is interesting. For us, we'd really want to watch that. There can be, and then try and explain it. I do know is that one of the things we have found is, and I don't know if we'll get into this later, but on the serve placement, a lot of the serve placements, the lower the ability of the player, the less likely they were to hit wide serves, and the more they hit the ball straight down the middle. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
So particularly in the deuce court, if you're swinging, if a person's pretty aggressive and you're swinging, you're hitting a ball into their body and they're swinging at their backhand, they're usually going to go down the line, and you'd be thinking that just because of the natural probability of that shot, and if they're hitting it, they're going to hit a lot of winners. Also, a lot of the players were not electing to run around any of the balls down the middle. They're still at the 3-0 and the 3-5 level. We found that players were still very much black and white in saying that if it comes to my left side, if I'm a right hand, if it comes to my left side, I'm hitting a backhand. If to my right side, I'm hitting a forehand. And there was not as much movement around the backhand to hit the forehand. So
interesting.
I actually think that for a lot of the time they were receiving many more backhands than they were forehands, but it still doesn't explain why they hit many more winners. It can also we also have to look at the other side of the net, the technical capability of the person volleying or
serving,
hitting the serve plus one.
That's interesting. That makes sense. It sounds like regardless, we do need to get more data, but that would be interesting to see where the majority of those backhand winners came from. We could break that down into the deuce versus ad court. Maybe a lot of them come from that deuce side and they're hitting that backhand across their body down the line for the winner there. And then on some of the ground stroke data, this wasn't as surprising to me, at least. The forehand ground stroke. So this is not a return. This is shots 3, 4, 5, and so on in the rally. The forehand had more winners and more errors than the backhand. Yeah,
because I think once the points get started, and then and players, they'll look on the return of serve. It's a more advanced player that can take a serve and run around it and hit it. I think in a ground stroke setting, when they're standing further back, then players will naturally, gravitate to hitting a forehand because it's the more dominant side. So that's not surprising. I mean, we see that across all levels of the sport, is that the forehand is a weapon. And as Craig, as Craig says, the forehand is the sword and the backhand is the shield, and that's in keeping with that. The forehand's definitely the dominant stroke.
Yeah. So outside of this data, I want to just talk about kind of general improvement. I've talked to people on this podcast in the past a little bit about technique. I don't coach technique, as you know, because I really just don't trust myself and have the experience doing it. And there's not, from what I see, at least like going to these USTA tournaments, and I'll watch 4-0 players play, and I just see all sorts of different technique taught.
Yep.
And I think I remember telling you back at that conference in 2019, I filmed myself serving and had coaches come up to me and talk to me about my serve technique, and got just advice all over the board. But if somebody's a 3-5 or 4-0 level player listening to this, and they want to get to the next level, whether it's 4-0, 4-5, where do you recommend people start as far as leveling up their improvement?
I think first is like find a person who knows what they're doing. Somebody, one of my mentors was Vic Braden, and Vic said, it's the laws of physics define the stroke. Not some coach's unique theory or opinion. The first thing I'd say is if you're getting your information about on YouTube, be very careful, okay? Because there's a lot of very professional looking content out there that is a lot of garbage, okay? So I really think wherever you're getting your information from, make sure you vet what they're saying, and we're bound by the laws of physics. So if you do the things that a 3-5 does, then you'll be a 3-5. So the biggest thing is to accept the fact that you're going to have to make change, okay? And change is pain. You cannot change your stroke in a couple of days. There's a process. It's going to take time. So the first thing to do is commit to change, and know that it's going to be painful. Your game is probably going to get worse before it gets better. And then make sure that whoever you're getting your instruction with knows what they're doing. For the most part, a 3-0 or 3-5 player, one of the biggest pain points is going to be the fact that they have to change grips, because it's easy in the beginning. A player picks up and they'll use an Eastern forehand grip, and it's pretty easy. That's what they're going to serve. So if you want to improve your serve, you're going to have to switch more to a continental grip, and that is very difficult, but players do it. Okay, so if you look at it and you say, you very rarely find a 4-5 player that has I don't want to say very rarely, I want to say it's more rare or rarer that you find a 4-5 player with a frying pan grip. Okay. So you've got to get outside of your comfort zone and accept the fact that you have to make change, and get somebody good, somebody knows what they're doing. I can name off a couple of guys who are really, really good and on that you can access on the internet, and you can get some sound advice. Also, there are some good books. Go read some of Vic Braden's books, that on technique. People will say, oh, wait a minute, the game has changed. The laws of physics haven't changed. So there's still things that the court dimensions haven't changed. So there are still some things that the top players do that makes them the top players. And you got to look at those elements.
So for somebody listening, if they want to go find a good coach, you said like vet the coach, make sure they know what they're doing, but how, like if I'm a 4-0 player or a 3-5 player, how am I supposed to know what they're doing? Like what questions should I ask? And actually, before you answer that, who are the online resources? I want to make sure we link to those.
Well, my first stop, and it's a guy I know really, really, really well. I've known him for a long time. I really admire what he has done, and he follows, a lot of the teachings of, some of the great teachers like Vic Braden. There's a bunch of them. Welby Van Horn. I can name a couple more, but the guy's name is Steve Smith, and there's a guy Steve Smith, and then he's and another guy who's been involved with him is Andy Fitzel. But
Yeah.
if you go look at Great Base Tennis, okay, I think it's just greatbasetennis.com. There's a lot of free stuff up there. And if I was like, even if my wife was, wanting to take lessons and improve her serve, I would be saying, go take a look at their online stuff, because there you're going to get some science-based stuff, and also they're not, you'll get all of it's free. So the teaching, so I really like what Steve is doing. So greatbasetennis.com, and I don't get any kickback or anything from him, but it's pretty, because I'm more on the strategy side, is we know that technique and strategy are intimately linked. Good technique enables you to execute strategy. So all you're doing when you have good technique, sound technique, good grips and all of that, then you're probably going to be able to execute strategy at a much higher level, so makes you a better player.
Right. Yeah. I actually had Steve on the podcast last year. He had some great stories on the podcast as well. But we'll be sure to link to his website. So what if I'm going to go to like my local club? Like, what should I be looking for in a coach? One piece of advice I give people is make sure the coach doesn't talk too much. Like, I'll go to and I don't know if you agree with this, but like I'll go hit at some local courts here and watch coaches, teach a 3-5 level player, and probably 30 of the 60-minute lesson is spent with the coach talking to them. And I feel like at that level, they just need to be hitting more balls, so that's something I tell people. What other kind of questions should they be asking, or what should they be looking for?
Well, I would say, only because of how much I believe in this, I'd be saying, do you use video in your lessons? Because coach can talk. One, they can be talking a lot, and they could also be telling you what you're doing. But how do you know what you're doing is what is and how are they measuring your improvement? You're going to say, when I make a change, how are you going to measure my improvement? In 6 weeks' time, am I still working on the same thing? And I think by using video, you're going to document your progress. So even if you find a good coach and he doesn't use video, you can always say, hey, what I'd like to do is bring my phone and videotape myself hitting a serve, so I can go back and take a look at it. So I think the use of video for me, and it's not just in tennis, it's in golf and any other sport, just means that the professional is at a whole different level. And that doesn't mean they have to videotape every single lesson. They just videotape you and show you examples. For me, I think most people are visual and kinesthetic learners. They learn by watching something themselves or a pro, a reference clip, and they also learn then by feeling. Okay, and it goes back to your point. How can you feel what you're doing right or wrong if he's talking the whole time? So there must be activity, but it's got to be monitored. So the use of video for me is a must. And I would also ask the coach, how long has he been teaching? Who has he taught? It doesn't mean that that's a guarantee that they're going to be a good coach. If they've been teaching for a long time. But I do think it's almost like when you go in and let's just say you've got $1,000 and you're going to invest it somewhere, you're probably going to ask some questions about, where am I going to put this money? I'm not just going to go in and give it to somebody and say, do with it what you want. And you're going to be spending a few $1,000s on lessons. So, you want to get you want to make sure that you vet whoever you teach. There are certifications. A lot of coaches, the USPTA, PTR. I think it's like if you're a PGA professional in golf, if you're always going to go out and you're going to say, hey, are you certified? So I would make sure to at least go with someone who's a certified professional.
That all makes sense. I think the use of video, great point on that. I mean, even if the coach doesn't use it, like you said, bring your own phone out there. I have a little tripod that I can put my phone on and attach to the fence. That I'll link to that in the show notes for anybody who wants to see that. And then I liked the point about measuring the improvement. So something I'm going to start working on later this summer, hopefully when I have more time, is just my backhand cross court. Like my backhand, I just have trouble with it, especially in singles. In doubles, I just hide it, but in singles, it's just a weakness. And I want to be able to improve that. So to do that, I might go out there and hit 50 backhands cross court on the ball machine and see how many I'm able to make in a certain target. And then in 6 weeks time, measure it and see if that number went up. Like that's a great, easy way to measure actual improvement. So I think that's a point well taken.
Actually on that, Will, is also, if you go out there, you've got to watch that. You know, there's this whole thing in motor learning is that random versus specific training. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So when you're doing is you're out there hitting with a ball, ball machine, you're hitting 50. It's kind of like me going to the driving range with hitting a bucket of balls, and I take out my driver and I go hit. After I've hit 10, I'm hitting them pretty well. I'm feeling pretty good. But I don't hit 10 in a row when I go play golf. So what you should do is, if you're using a ball machine, is add some randomness to the training, and maybe while you're focusing on one target cross court, you actually need to change your movement pattern so you're not always moving to the same ball. Hit them from different depths and also from different starting points, but alternate also maybe with one down the line and one cross court, or change it up. So that you feel like you're grooving and all that. But repetition, definitely. If the technique is good, if the grip is good, remember that if your grip or anything else, any technique is bad and you go hit 1,000 balls, all you're doing is you're making that bad habit worse.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. You taught me that a while back, and that's in your certification course. But maybe the ball machine drill would be a forehand followed by 2 backhands, and I kind of alternate one down the line and one cross court or something like that, and then I can measure just measure the backhands, but you need that forehand in there to improve. Okay, cool. So I want to ask about dive into some strategy a little bit, and then we'll finish off with some rapid fire questions. Let's first start with serve strategy. So how do you typically coach serve strategy? What mistakes do you see at the club level?
You're talking about doubles
for doubles
specifically, right? Yeah. I think that, like we said earlier, a lot of times a player is so wary. They've been taught to say, hey, your first serve percent, try get as many first serves in play as possible. You've got to get a high first serve percentage is good, and double faults are bad. And actually, there's we actually know this is that you can get too many first serves in, because if I'm just the example is not a good one, is to say that if I just bop the ball in on a first serve and I get 100% in, but I get broken every game, then it's not good. Okay, so we're always looking at the percentage of first serves won is very important. It's not just your first serve percentage; it's by how many you're winning. So I think you're right from the word go. When you're taking lessons or when you're practicing, your first serve should be a weapon, and you definitely want to be aggressive on your first serve. I think that the way to get aggressive is to, yes, you can hit the ball hard. You can hit the ball with more pace. Okay, you can place the ball better, or you can add spin. It's usually, most players will go out there, and the way that they improve serve is to say, oh, well, the only way to improve, or the easiest way, is to hit the ball harder. And it's not necessarily the case. So I would say the first thing is to be able to place the ball well. Okay, because you've got a partner standing up at the net, and if you can place the ball well, you're building a 1-2 play. And the 1-2 play is going to be that your partner is up at the net and looking to poach and take the return as a volley and put the ball away. But you enhance that capability by placing the ball well. We actually use the analogy and say that there's I used to do a lot of work with Robert Redford, okay, because in Park City, and so I used to play tennis and give him and his family lessons. And I came up with a strategy then saying that in doubles you're looking at you can only win an Oscar if you're on stage. Okay, and to be on stage, you've got to be up at the net. That's halfway between the service line and the net. Otherwise, you play a supporting role. So even if you're the server or you're the player standing back, your job is you're not going to win an Oscar. Your job is to help the player up front to win an Oscar. And I think even on the serve, that's the mentality. It's going to be you've got to be aggressive on your serve by first placing the ball better. And second, learning how to hit a spin serve, okay, and then work on adding some pace. And the whole goal then in doubles is to make your partner look really, really good. And I ultimately think that's the in all parts of doubles play. That's really what you're trying to do. Is if you're back and your partner's up, play the shot that gives them the best opportunity to cross over and take the ball and win it for you. They're in a better position to win the point.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that reminded me of a phrase that Craig told me once. I think we were going over a report for somebody who had it might've been singles, but they had like a 90% first serve percentage or something. And the thing he either wrote it or said it to me was their first serve isn't acting like a first serve. And I thought that was like a good way to put it. And then on the reverse of that, another mistake that I see, like you said, is people focusing on pace too much to improve their serve. And I see a lot of players at the 3-5 or 4 level where they use their first serve as a chance just to get a free point, when in reality, they have that partner at the net to help them get that. So they're just trying to smack their first serve. They end up with a first serve percentage of 50%, and maybe they win a lot of those, but the opponent ends up with a lot of second serve looks. So then they get broken a lot that way too. So finding that balance is really key.
Yeah, and I think also then along with that, you get a lot of players who try to hit the cover of the ball, and they're hitting at 100 miles an hour, and they're going to miss most of them anyway. The serve percentage is very low. And then they hit one of those little poop second serves. You go, no, actually you want to have your two serves be similar. So I usually find that when a person starts training and working on a good first serve, especially with spin, is their second serve is almost pulled up, is elevated. That the second serve gets better just as a result of their first serve. But I really believe that for all club players, you've got to learn how to use spin. That is one of the key differences. It's not so much pace. Look, if not all of us, or especially not me, is 6'3" or taller. So it's difficult to add pace on the serve. It's easier to be able to work on placement. And as I said earlier, is that we find with the club players, most of the serves are hit down the middle because they're worried they're going to miss. So the first thing you start doing is working on placements. And we find that the pros, that the middle of the court, that center band in the deuce and the ad courts, is actually the area that the fewest amount of serves are actually hit to. Most of the serves are hit out wide to open up the court, and then also down the tee. Because when you're serving down the tee, you're really giving your partner the opportunity to poach. And when you are serving out wide, then you're opening up the court, you're splitting your opponents, them and the team, and you're creating gaps for your next shot. So
I remember looking at the data and seeing that on first serves, especially, they like to go either wide or tee rather than into that body. So let's talk return strategy. So how do you think about return strategy? What are some mistakes you see? How do you recommend people focus on getting or breaking serve?
Yeah, I think on the return of serve, I think that there's two different, depending on the strength of the serve. Okay, the return of first serve is usually the returner is reactive. Your number one job is just to get the ball back in play. Don't miss the return. Okay, and sometimes players will go too big on the return, and they miss it when really all they need to do is just get the ball back. Okay, to give their partner, the returner's partner, an opportunity to get onto that stage and win an Oscar. Okay.
Right.
So your number one job is as a returner is, if you on the first serve you reactive, is get the ball back in play. On the return of second serve, you can generally be a little bit more proactive or aggressive. But again, the emphasis is don't miss the return. Your biggest danger on the court obviously is the service partner. So you've got to get the ball by them, but don't risk the lines. I think a lot of players miss wide because they're so worried about the person at the net. And I think so a good rule of thumb is just to use the singles sideline as a target area, because it gives you a margin for error. Okay. And again, if the mindset is going to be that on the return of serve, you are trying to get your returner's partner, who starts off in the most precarious position on the court. You're trying to get, in the middle of the court, they're standing right in the middle of no man's land. You would just want to give them the opportunity to get in, because they're going to get in quicker than you are, and to give them the opportunity to poach. So don't miss the return. Also, as we said at the start of the podcast, is that the return is the most under practiced shot. You're going to get better at your return of serve by hitting return of serves. And that's not just someone serving out of a basket. It's trying to play some points. So if you're going to drill, always do a drill starting with a one player serving and one player returning, or at least one of those shots.
Yeah, you can always do the cross court doubles matches too if you only have one partner. I do that a lot, where the doubles alley is good, and then the middle service line extended is the other line that's in or out. So that's a great way to do it. What about I like how you break down first versus second serve. So we're being reactive on the first serve, really focused on not missing. Second serve, we're being more proactive. But what if the opposing net player, so the server's partner, is really active at the net? How should we avoid them? Do we need to just go down the line or lob it? How do you think about advising in that situation?
Yeah, I think that one is, if you're confident in your ability to, you first don't want to miss it. Okay, you're a good net player is trying to force you to make a stupid error, so they're going to be moving around and all of that. And I think that yes, definitely, it's, lobbing is a good option. I don't think you want to lob every single time, but I think that the first thing to do is to first pick your target area and try and block out what that person at the net is doing. A good, we always used to tell that person who is already on stage that until they make it, fake it. They should always be up there, and they should always be moving around and all that. And the intimidation factor that the net player has is very controllable. They can stand over there and bang their, jump on their toes and all that. The first thing to do is on the return of serve on the returner is to be coached to not worry about the person at the net. So to try as far as possible block them out, and not to worry about them poaching. Because a lot of times the returner will miss because they fear that the person at the net could poach. But they haven't really tested them. They don't even know if they know how to volley. So I think for the first one, it's like, just pick a target area, use that center, the service sideline, and make the return. If the guy poaches, and it's a winner, you've learned something. Okay, but don't make any changes until you really need to. That you need to make your opponents need to first prove themselves.
Right.
Then after that, you can say, okay, wait a minute, this guy is poaching well. So maybe what you do then is to then test them down the line. Hit it at them, see what they do. Yeah. And then you also have the option of the lob.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I always try to advise people, make them beat you at the net first before you change your solid cross court return, because especially at the club level, if you're able to hit a solid low return, kind of at that singles line or over that middle net strap area, most players are not going to be able to hit that volley for a winner at the 3-5 level. And if they do, like you said, then adjust, but don't let them force you into mistake that without actually beating you first.
Exactly.
So last thing I wanted to talk about was net play. So when we're at the net, server's partner or returner's partner, you talked about wanting to force errors from the returner if you're the server's partner, which I find to be great advice typically. But what should we be looking for as far as cues to poach? How should we be moving at the net in doubles?
Yeah. Well, the service partner, first of all, is on stage and has position. Okay, and one of the things I learned, early on was there are three requirements for you to be to go for a winner when you're anywhere on the court. Okay, the first thing is to have balance as a player, and then maybe as a team. You need to have position, and typically the position is halfway between the service line and the net, and that is the stage. You've got to be on stage. And then you need a ball that is higher than the net at point of contact. Because look, I could be standing close up to the net and someone hits a ball at my feet and I'm having to dig it up. I shouldn't be going for a winner. But if I can make contact at a higher point, I can, I've got the benefit of hitting with angle and pace. And then what I should do is if I get a ball that meets all those requirements, so balance, position, ball height, higher than the net at point of contact, I am what they term close. Okay, and then I should go close to close, or I should hit that volley on the side or to the person who's standing closest, the weak link, because they're probably out of position. If any one of those is missing, I should hit the volley to the deep person and reset and maintain my position on the stage. I think a lot of people think that just because they're up at the net, they should always hit a winner. And that's not the case. And it's usually because of the ball height at point of contact. Now, sometimes you can control that, because if I stand and I wait for a ball to come to me, then the ball's going to be dropping with gravity. And I could be standing halfway between the service line and the net and just be hitting a lot of balls on my ankle height. But remember, the ball has got to cross the net first. So good net players use that acronym is ABC. Okay, and just always be closing. So whenever you're in position, you try and make contact with the ball as close to the net as possible, because then you're going to be guaranteeing that the ball's not dropping, and you can hit with angle and pace. And then what you do is you make sure that you don't stand up at the net. If you don't hit a winner, you've got to get back into position and be on that in the center of or on that center between the net and the service line. So one of the things that we've also picked up in the stats, and I think you've seen it also, is that regardless of your level, the percentage of points won by players going to the net is remarkable. So one of the things that, if we start looking, your question earlier was saying, how do you improve your game? I think that the lowest hanging fruit in anyone's game is to get good at the net. Go to the net, because we find that about 66% of all points that if you approach the net correctly, you're going to win 2/3, 2 out of every 3 points that you play. And sometimes you're not even going to have to volley, because you put so much pressure on your opponents that they miss the ball. So again, that is one of the things that's not practiced enough. And I think that when you do practice going to the net, usually it's in a very controlled feed. So I'll be working with you, Will, and I'd say, okay, Will, let's hit. I'm going to feed you some short balls, and then I feed you just a perfect short ball, and you hit your nice slice approach, and you get to the net. Then I feed you a forehand volley, a backhand volley, and an overhead. That's not what opponents are trying to do. Opponents are trying to hit the ball away from you. They're trying to hit the ball at your feet. They're trying to hit the ball at your face. So the way to do that is to play live ball points and get to the net, so that the old perfect volley where you volleying at eye level, bend your knees and all of that. While it's very nice, and you do have to learn that, it's not what you're doing when you play in a match.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of my favorite drills that I've seen, I saw last year at Indian Wells, Shea Su Wei was doing this, and then I saw Marcello Arevalo here at the Dallas Open doing it this year. He just won the French Open. They had their coach standing, in both cases it was in the ad court, but you can do it from the deuce court. But they had their coaches standing in the ad court from about a returner's position. And Arevalo and Shea are standing across the net from them on the same side of the court. So they're like the server's partner and the coach is like the returner. And the coach was just blasting balls over and over again at them. And it replicated a real live, really hard return against a first serve, for example. And all of the volleys were pretty difficult. Some of them were above the net, some of them were dipped at the feet. And it was just rapid fire, very quick reaction. And I remember watching that and thinking, like, I'd never seen a like club level player practice volleys like that. It's always just kind of back and forth, hitting to the person at the baseline, and the net player hits back to them, and so on. So it's a great drill if you have a coach you can feed like that.
Yeah, I mean, even if at the club level, even if you're playing, playing with you have some friends and all that, and you're just doing that, the reflex volley game, and where you all everyone has to start back on the service line, and then somebody just feeds it, and then you play out the point, because then you're closing, you're practicing closing, you're practicing putting the ball away, and also you're getting balls that are not the nice easy volleys. You have to be much more reactive.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go through a few rapid fire questions, then I'll let you go. What is your favorite tennis book?
How can I forget? How can I forget the name? A Handful of Summers, no doubt about it. A Handful of Summers, yeah. That's just going back to the past. If anyone hasn't read that book, that's a must read.
Yeah, I've had a few people recommend it. I'm gonna have to read it. It's been too many people. What's your favorite non-tennis book?
No, my problem is that I don't. While I read books, I always forget the names, even like movies or TV shows. So I've read a lot, but so I think that that a book that had a great impact with me was The Gene Thing, and I read a lot of the stuff with like Blink, and any of those like I won't say it's self-help, but those books about learning and all that. So there's that. The Gene Thing was about, it was, I think, David Epstein who wrote it, and just talks about motor learning and all that. So that was for me, it was really, really good. Then it's Blink was Malcolm Gladwell, and he wrote a bunch of books, and so I really like those kind of books where they talk about whether it's athletes or how people evolve, and like the 1,000-hour rule. We all learned a whole lot about the 1,000-hour rule, and when you really read into it, that's not actually true. I can spend 1,000 hours practicing basketball, or 10,000-hour rule, excuse me, not 1,000-hour rule, 10,000 hours. I could spend the next 100,000 hours, and I'll never become an NBA player. Right.
It makes sense. Cool. Well, we'll link to both of or all three of those in the show notes. What's your favorite tournament?
I have a bunch of favorites. Obviously, I think the Wimbledon is great. It's just a spectacular event to actually visit and be at. But I actually think that my favorite favorite tournament of all time is NCAA's.
Oh wow! Okay.
Cool.
We have not had that answer yet.
It's almost like it's a major. Yeah, it's almost like a major, and we know that you get highly competitive, and it's a team play. You're getting singles, you're getting doubles, you're getting guys playing on a team. I think that every single junior and even club players need to go to the NCAAs and go watch the atmosphere and go see that kind of tennis. It's remarkable.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to that. I've not been yet, and I've been going to a lot of college matches here in Fort Worth, a lot of TCU matches, but I have not been to the NCAA, so I'm gonna do that one year.
Well, the 2023 is back at the home of tennis, and it's at the USTA complex. And
Okay.
in 2023, they're running Division 1, 2, and 3, the national championships. The NCAA is there, so that's going to be really, really, really good couple of weeks. It's worth the trip out there.
Cool. Okay, I will check that out. Last question for you: how can we make pro doubles more popular?
I think by not always messing with the format. I think is to I do understand. You understand why. The shorten the matches, shorten the scorings. You do all of that. I think when you do that, even though they say it's in the guise of for TV, of making it more interesting, I think in the long run it actually hurts the sport. I think that if there was a way to have some more of the singles players play, doubles is going to be is good. I mean, if you just look at with Nick Kyrgios playing with Kokkinakis, there were more people watching those matches than there were at some of the singles matches. They're there to they get to turn people away. Yeah. So I think that having some of the bigger names playing does help. I think that also then people realize is going like, hey, there are some amazing doubles players that you don't even know their names, and they actually doubles is a specialty. But the fact is that I believe is that you have a Federer, if he Federer or Nadal, if they played a lot of doubles, they would be top doubles players also. So I think it's fun to see them playing. I don't know if it's ever possible, but to have some more of those formats where the top players play. Maybe if the season was shorter, I think that you also all these top players are saying, well, I'm playing singles, I'm playing 11 months of the year, I don't get a break. I'll play doubles and I'm going to get hurt. So maybe the answer is to say, hey, if we did ever move to a shorter season, then those players would start playing a little bit more doubles. Yeah,
there's a lot of answers to that and a lot of ways to kind of look at it, but it is it would help a lot to have, like, obviously Nadal and Federer play. Like you see how much viewership and how much people talked about Serena playing doubles a few weeks ago in Eastbourne. It's huge when those big players can play. So anyways, that is all I have today, Warren. Thanks for hopping on. Any final requests of the audience? We'll be sure to link to your website, tennisanalytics.net, so that people can check that out. They can upload their own matches and get a player report. Any other requests of the audience?
No, I think the stat of the week, that on our website, you'll be posting that weekly stat of the week. There's singles and there's doubles there and all that. It's free. There's no obligation. But if you sign up for that, it's a good 30-second read, and it's just got an interesting stat of the week. We're focusing on Wimbledon now, and next week, next week we'll do a wrap up of the quarterfinals through finals for the champions. So it's just some interesting stats, and usually we're just picking out one important stat, and we'll write a little bit about it. It's a 30-second read. So I think sign up for those. I think there must be about close to, we've got a library of quite a few. I think I haven't counted, but there's
got to be close to 100 at this point.
Yeah, and I'm busy working on categorizing them all, because I've had some requests. People say, "Wow, you got so many," but how do I look at only the doubles ones? And I think that I'm working on that in the near future, so that you can go sort and look at just the doubles, or just net play, or look at very specific stat of the weeks. So.
Sure. Cool. Awesome. Well, yeah, for anybody listening, tennisanalytics.net is where you can sign up for the stat of the week, which is totally free and a very easy way to dive into some of this data and analytics. But thanks again, Warren, for hopping on, and thanks everyone for listening. And I will talk to you all in the next episode.
Thanks, Will.
If you want to become a smarter doubles player and start winning more matches, then join the Tennis Tribe Doubles Strategy newsletter. Every single Thursday, I'll send you a new doubles tip or tactic that you can use in your very next match. And when you join, you're going to get a free guide on how to play with more confidence and start dominating at the net in doubles. My name's Will. I'm the founder of the Tennis Tribe, and over the last 5 years, I've worked with players at every level of the game, from USTA 3.0 players all the way to Division I college programs, as well as some of the top 10 doubles players in the world. And on Thursdays, with this strategy newsletter, I share that knowledge and advice that I've gained over the years with you. So to sign up, you can go to thetennistribe.com. And again, you'll get that free net play guide when you join.